All right, so we're going to talk briefly right now about the Thorium browser update. The developer released a update on his own blog post, so we want to look at that just because we've been covering it. Of course, if you missed the Thorium browser, I've done 2 videos on it, and at first, like, nobody knew it existed until Chris Titus found it, and then he just said it's the best browser in the world, and then it's caused everybody to start looking at it. And Thorium browser, it had a lot of technical difficulties. It was ever so slightly faster than stock Chrome. But the problem is it was based on a 5 versions. I was seriously out of date. I think it was 5 versions out of date. It had a few different things that might have been better for privacy. It had a lot of things that were not better for security. But it had some Easter eggs that caused some controversy. And then this caused Chris Titus to actually take down his original video, release another video where he swung back and said he will never endorse any project unless it has a whole team, which I think is equally problematic in the opposite direction. But, I think every project, you need to look at the project, you need to understand it for a little bit better and understand more about the person behind it. So, I'm not criticizing what he did on either of his 2 videos. Just saying I'm not sure I would take such a dogmatic approach. Say there's got to be 15 people before I will promote a project. But there were a lot of Easter eggs that were not good. They were really not safe for work Easter eggs buried inside of it. And this came to light as some people started looking into it. And then we didn't hear anything about it. And this is actually almost a month ago, but Ricky just sent that up to me today. So thank you, Ricky. And I thought it'd be neat to cover here. So he writes the good, the bad, and the ugly. And when this came out, he was in the hospital for a few weeks, is what he says, which is why we didn't hear a lot from him. My only criticism is in that period of time is there were some GitHub commits that were completely deleted, not closed out, but completely deleted. And that is what caused my major issue, outside of course, the not safe for work stuff jammed inside of a browser. But he does explain here, and I think that looking at apologies and things like this, I think this is a good apology, and I think that this is a developer that has learned a lesson, and I think that this is a developer that we should not turn away from. We should embrace the developer in the community, and hopefully he can learn from this and grow from it. And this blog post, on the surface at least, looks like he has learned something, and so I thought it would be a really good thing to cover. So he says, if you didn't already know what's going on, then this post is for you. He said, here's what happened. This is number 1, an explanation about why I was gone for over a month with no online activity. And 2, an explanation about the recent drama regarding the Easter egg and Thorium and the concepts of the website. And 3, a layout of what I'm guilty of, not guilty of, and how I'm going to move forward, and an apology to the community. And 4, dispel some of the crazy twists of facts that resulted from the grapevine word of mouth. As such accusations, I hosted CSAM on my site that thorium binaries are malicious, i.e. a virus, or that I was trying to medically influence people. Okay, this is deep. Okay, first and foremost, I had nothing to do with most of what he's talking about in part 4. Just to say there's not safe for work content in there that shouldn't be in the browser. And if that's your personal proclivity, you enjoy yourself, but it shouldn't be in a public browser. That was my stance, and it still was. I never alluded that anything he had in there was CSAM. I did not say it was a virus. I did say that it would probably lack security because of an outdated Chromium core. And I didn't even pick up on the medically influencing people, and I'm reading in going, what? I didn't even know that was in there. So anybody want to comment on this before I go in any further on this? And we're going to try and keep this clear, concise, and on point so I don't have to do a lot of editing for the video. Anyone want to jump in before I continue?
I took a quick look at it and some of the links in the article, and I found some of them just not appropriate to be buried in a web browser that you're trying to distribute among people, because I don't know what triggers these images, or if they're just baggage that comes along with it and it never gets seen.
Yeah, I mean, it was mostly the images that were in there. There were actually two images. One on the site, which was definitely, and they were all like anime slash furry, but they were like anime slash furry pornography. The one that was on the web browser was definitely classed as that. The other one, it would have an argument as being such, but not necessarily. So the one on the browser itself was a lot more calm than the one that was on the website. But that's kind of what it is. He says, so I was gone for a little over a month because I was in the hospital with some medical issues, no access to a computer. Okay, so that's fine. We don't need to dig any deeper into any of that. He had an appropriate Easter egg to Thorium. It was accessible by going to the developer page on the Chrome URLs and Chrome about and scrolling to the bottom. There's one called YIF. Clicking on the link would take you to an image of a suggestive furry artwork. And if you are curious, you can look that up and click that button that says here. And we are not going to put this on the stream.
Sorry.
He says, this is the valid criticism. Minors could be using the browser and run into it. The artist was not asked or given credit for their work. It is unprofessional for a publicly available browser, and it potentially violates his own code of conduct. So from this, it looks like he says, these are valid points that I did wrong, and he's claiming those. And that is why I think that this is an absolute legitimate apology, that this person did some decent things, and he did some incorrect things, and in so doing, what had happened is he recognized his problem and he took action steps to remove him. Now, the reason he took down a lot of the page, everything all at once, is because he was in the hospital without good access to the internet. And that really was the case. And so that's why things went down so fast. It was just an immediate deal with it. And then he was able to slowly get stuff back up. He says, when I initially made it when the user base was really small, my intention was after a few people found it, the joke would be over and I would remove it. Unfortunately, it was found by and blew up online when he was in the hospital and he could not act or remove it. And he said he removes it in 9947421. So Thorium versions before M119 will have it. And going forward, the Easter egg is changed to a robot, in basically the cute sad tab robot, which that one is an appropriate image, but we'll not click on that right now. Okay, so to all users who had no idea about this, I'm sorry. And hey, I accept that apology. I think that this letter is definitely a person who learned from something, which is good. He says, next, the Thorium website had a rather nasty sounding directory with images that if you didn't know what they were there for would be alarming. It was the backup directory of a activist anti-circumcision website made by John A. Erickson. It was up for over a decade.
Okay.
He died in 2021. The host was shut down and the web archive.org copy was on the site. He says he made this as a private backup. There were no links to on the site. If you had the exact URL, you could enter it. So some people found it. And that's why I didn't find that, because I was only clicking things that were actively on the link, not looking at whatever other things people crawled.
I clicked on one of the links. It took me actually to a kind of a disturbing, controversial video, which I won't get into detail with. And another one took me to a website that kind of pointed to the same thing.
Yep.
So I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah. So basically this has to do with is there has been a growing controversy around the idea of male circumcision. Of course, it is a something in the Jewish law and basically through the Abrahamic law. So the Jewish religion and the Islamic religion, I believe, also generally supports this. America did for a while, and there's been a lot of controversy going back and forth about it. I'm not taking any position one way or the other, whether somebody should be clipped or not. That's entirely a person's own decision. And so basically that's kind of the case. He said, yeah, this should be available, not be available on the website. He has since taken that down, just keeping it on on a just a personal backup. He says, through word of mouth, the telephone, some users got angry, turning accusations about bad stuff on the site. Thorium was a virus, and really it did trigger a warning on Windows because he didn't want to pay for a signing key, or that he was trying to influence people medically, snip, snip. But he says the backup site should not have been on the server and on the hard drive instead. And he's since done that. So he's gotten rid of all that. So this is where I think he has a really good apology here. He's guilty of indiscretion, naivety, unprofessional, and breaking trust of users. Okay, I agree. Fine. He's not guilty of making malicious code. I will argue he is guilty of releasing code based on old and insecure versions. So I'm not calling that malicious, but I think it is definitely, it's not malicious, but it's not as secure as it should be for a web browser. He doesn't have anything to do with the CSAM, and he does not want to harm the Chrome community. So he said his stuff originally exploded because of Chris Titus Tech's video, which he has unlisted the video, and then he posted a new one where he basically came out and said, well, I am never going to promote any project again that does not have a whole team of people behind it. There's entire teams of projects that also go down wrong paths as well. I mean, look at Ubuntu. No, I'm kidding. The point being, of course, is that I think that this is a person that he built a little site. It blew up because one of us got our hands on it, and then everybody in the world starts looking at it, and this is what brought a lot of things to light. So I completely accept this person's apology, and I don't have any ill will going forward. It just sounds to me like he learned a lot of very valuable lessons, and if the website is accurate that he's, I think, roughly 22 or 23 years old, that is a really good time to learn lessons like this. So congratulations, and keep working on software, Alex. So that's what I have to say. Anybody else want to wrap up anything else on this topic before we move on? Salbu, you are muted, or your microphone's not working. Salbu's microphone has been having issues lately.
Yeah.
I'll just say,
Yep, go ahead, Mark.
You make mistakes. It wasn't anything malicious, and you make mistakes. It wasn't anything malicious. It wasn't for any kind of sexual intent. It doesn't seem to be more of a medical lack of humor joke. So long as the dude, he's in his early 20s, he's going to make a lot of mistakes in life.
Yep.
And I think I agree, just echoing your sentiment, that if you correct those mistakes in a professional manner, and he did make an apology and explained his absence as well, which he really doesn't have to do. He doesn't owe that to anybody. I do realize that, when you're running a project, you want to be a little more, you want to keep people up to date with what's going on. So I understand that. That's good that he does that. But I think if he learned from his mistake and he corrects his mistakes and does not continue to make the same or similar mistakes, that's a W. That's a life experience, and he'll do well if he just keeps on.
Salbu, you have thoughts?
Yeah, trying again. I think this is because I haven't heard this until I joined this, but this sounds like a good example of someone is doing something without thinking about what they're doing because they haven't done something like this before, and then someone else seeing what is being done and jumping to conclusions.
Yeah. Anyone else have any comments?
You can correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounded like he didn't intend for it to be a professional project and then got taken out of the way right when it took off.
Yeah, I that's the impression I got looking at the original website. It definitely was reminiscent of a hobby project, not something serious. And I think it blew up so big because nobody heard about it at all until Chris Titus did his video. And so that's why as YouTube content creators, we need to be a little bit more careful sometimes before we throw something that's so small into such a large audience. We have to be aware of that. But at the same time, we don't want to say, well, it's got to have 15 people behind it before I'll do anything about it. because then you had the problem that there's never anything new, and anything new is one of the biggest problems we have in tech and businesses and services nowadays in anything. It's everything's all corporate controlled, and that's a problem too. So I think the big challenge is just too big of a channel, got it too fast while he was not actually in the helm dealing with things. Because I think that if he was actually not in the hospital actively working on it and sees the thing blowing up, he's like, oh, let me take that stuff out really fast. You know, I don't have any doubt that he'd probably do
Yeah,
that.
because once you throw something out on the internet, it's out there and you ain't getting it back.
Yeah.
You can't chase it like down the cable going down the street and hope to catch it. It's gone.
Yeah, correct.
And one other thing is that limiting yourself to projects over a certain member size or developer size, you risk not being able to talk about the really big and important projects. Like the two most important projects in the Linux and internet space was the Linux kernel. And then you had the OpenSSL project, which was one guy. And then someone found a nasty bug. And then everyone realized that, oops, this really is just one guy. And if something happened to him, then the whole project died. And then some other people started volunteering and so on.
Yep.
So you are you need to have some more additional criterion rather
Correct.
than the size of the developers.
Yep. Thank you for watching this video from Switched to Linux. This channel would not be possible without the backing of the program supporters scrolling on the screen now. You can be a supporter at Patreon at patreon.com/TOMM or at thinklifemedia.com. I also want to thank the open source community who creates such excellent software that makes producing this show possible. Please remember to support your software communities. Thank you, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.